Tyree Elvazie Enkot Daor. Jevite Bagon Daor. Dervi Jerry Sidibilos Daor. Gemele Meli Sidibilos. Lomiri Ziri. Mesmalgon Bestila.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. A couple of weeks ago, I did a video about how they could have easily given better conclusions for Jaime and Varys' stories in the final season of Game of Thrones. It was based on where the show left off after season 7. That one is linked down below. Today, I'm doing the same thing, but focusing on Dany, who I and many people feel received the very worst ending of anyone on the show. I don't think it even comes close. In my previous video, I mentioned that Jaime was the second worst, but there's still a chasm between what they did to him and the inexplicable, bizarre changes that they made to Daenerys Targaryen. Season 8 Dany bears no resemblance to the character created by George R. R. Martin. There isn't an inkling of madness in his first 5 books. And even on the show, where she's presented in a slightly more severe manner than in the novels, we're never led to even consider that she could become a genocidal maniac. They had her acting like the Night King. But this is a woman who stood up to the Dothraki to protect the prisoners of war. She fought to end slavery in southern Essos and actually delayed her departure to Westeros in order to ensure that servitude would remain eradicated all around Slaver's Bay. Dany is essentially one of the heroes of this story. This isn't to say that she's perfect, but her intentions have always been good. She's the breaker of chains, not the destroyer of cities. Dan and Dave made her out to be like Magneto, the villain in X-Men, or Hela, Thor's evil sister from Thor Ragnarok. And yeah, I picked two of the most visually bizarre examples because what we got from Benioff and Weiss was absolutely ridiculous and indefensible. You can provide a wow moment that makes sense, with both the characters' motivations and the plot. Cersei blowing up the Sept is a good example of this. No one watching thought it for a second that she was incapable of it. It fit. Now, before I get to the two possible ways they could have ended Dany's story in a satisfying way, I need to address what is often the most common defense of what Dan and Dave did. Yeah, there's a small minority of people out there that support the ending. And what these people usually say is that her character turn was part of the roadmap that George had given Benioff and Weiss about how his novels will end. I disagree with that assertion, since Dan and Dave have said that there were 3 shocking twists that George revealed to them. One was that Bran would be the final king. 2, Shireen would be burned alive. And finally, that Hodor's condition is due to Bran's warging while time traveling. So surely, if Martin's idea was to make Dany go crazy, it would make the list. And if you go through the various Benioff and Weiss interviews, they take ownership themselves of the decision on Dany and never mention George. But even if someone remains unconvinced, the bottom line is that Dan and Dave never earned that ending by what they presented of Dany through 7 seasons. That's the main point. Even in their adaptation, they commit a gross assassination of one of TV's most iconic characters in recent years. Now, it's not just that we wanted a happy conclusion for Dany's story, as this unfortunate quote by Peter Dinklage suggests. I mean, we're Game of Thrones fans. We know what to expect. We only wanted an appropriate one. Now, I think there are 2 ways they could have gone. Previously, Dany got delayed in Marine because she was trying to make lives better for those people in Essos that she had encountered. So it makes sense that once she arrived in Westeros, that she'd again be sidetracked, this time by the greater fight against the Night King. That's one thing I believe Dan and Dave got right. The other is that Dany would likely be drawn to Jon, and I could see a relationship develop between them. So I think they got the basics correct. Ultimately, I believe her path is one of sacrifice, and that she would die in the fight against the Night King. In the Jaime video I did previously, I had him dying in that battle as well. Such an epic conflict would need to come with a great sacrifice, which we really didn't have in the Long Night episode. But that separate mess is a story for another video. It all just makes sense. She's been pursuing the throne at least outwardly, but along the way, she's made such a great impact. Maybe more so than she would even make as queen. We saw in Essos and now she would be saving the realm in Westeros. I don't think there's a better, more bittersweet way for her to go out than as a hero, a different sort of queen that never was, but one who attained her goals in spirit anyway. A second option, and one I honestly don't like all that much, would be for her to survive the fight at Winterfell with injuries, be forced to go back to Dragonstone to recover, and there in a weakened condition, she gives birth to a child with Jon, after which she would die. And while this fits in George's world and the many tragedies surrounding childbirth and its impact on women, and also Dany's desire for a child and the thought that she would never conceive again, I think Daenerys Targaryen has to go out in a much bigger way than characters like Emma or Laena in House of the Dragon. And while I prefer the first option, I would have at least accepted the second one in the final season. I mean, I would even preferred her actually taking the throne over the madness that we did get. If only we could just kind of forget that ending as easily as they had Dany forget about the simplest of things. So, what do you think would have been the best ending for Dany? The approach that Benioff and Weiss took just tore the heart and soul out of the show. I started this analysis of the final season of Game of Thrones a couple of weeks ago with a look at how Jaime and Varys could have had satisfying conclusions. It's something I'm going to continue going forward, not just with other characters, but some of the themes, like the White Walkers, and also how badly they botched everything around Jon learning that he was a Targaryen. That was worse than the gender reveal party gone bad. So that's it for this one. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the like button. And if you're interested in more Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon content, listen to Caraxes and subscribe. I want to thank everyone for watching, and I'll see you soon.